The big holding companies have spent the last 18 months telling Wall Street they're all in on AI. But here's what nobody wants to say out loud. They do have an AI story, but what they do not have is an AI business model. And that gap is the biggest opening mid-size agencies have had in a decade. I'm Kurt Schmidt, and this is the Agency Brief. All right, let's get into it. Digiday published a piece this week that basically said what a lot of us have been thinking. The major agency holding companies, your Publicis, your WPP, your Omnicom, they've all got the AI talking points down. They've got the proprietary platform names, they've got the investor decks, but what they don't have is a clear answer to a very simple question. How does AI actually change the way you charge clients and deliver work? And that's really the whole ballgame. Because right now, the holding company AI play looks a lot like what happened with the digital transformation 10 or 15 years ago. Slap a new label on the same services, announce a center of excellence, hire a chief AI officer, put on a press release, and then behind the scenes, the actual work is still getting done pretty much the same way by the same people and billed by the same hours. The problem is structural. These are organizations built around headcount. Their revenue model is fundamentally tied to the number of people they can bill. AI, if you take it seriously, reduces headcount. It compresses timelines. It makes a 10-person team capable of what used to take 30. So if you're a holding company CEO, you're in this impossible position where you need to tell investors you're embracing AI while also not admitting that AI undercuts the very thing your revenue depends on. I've seen this movie before, and the ending is always the same. The big guys move slow because they can't afford to move fast. Their own business model is the thing holding them back. Now here's why this matters if you're running a 15 or 40 person agency. You don't have that structural problem. You can actually change how you work. You can reprice around outcomes instead of hours. You can adopt tools without a 9-month procurement process. You can move a client from concept to delivery in half the time and charge a premium for it because the value went up, not down. I've been saying this for a while. Mid-size agencies that tool up now on AI are going to eat market share from bloated holding companies. This Digiday piece is basically the evidence. The big shops are stuck telling a story they can't operationalize, and that's your window. And Adweek echoed this same theme from a slightly different angle. They ran a piece this week about how AI is upending agency business models broadly. The framing was more general, but the conclusion lands in the same place. The agencies that figure out how to translate AI capability into a new pricing and delivery model, not just efficiency gains, behind the scenes, are the ones that are going to win the next 5 years. But I want to be honest about the uncertainty here. Nobody has fully cracked the AI business model yet. Not the holding companies, not the independents. Everybody is still just figuring it out. The difference is that smaller, more nimble shops can experiment faster and afford to get it wrong a couple of times before they get it right. The holding companies can't afford to get it wrong even once because the stock price is watching. So, if you're an independent agency owner listening to this and you've been feeling like you're behind on AI, take a breath. You're probably closer to the front than you think. The big guys just have better PR. Okay, let's move through the rest of the week. Digiday reported on as something that's been building for a while but is now becoming undeniable. The wall between paid search and organic search is crumbling, and it's AI that's doing the demolition. What's happening is that generative AI in search, think Google's AI overviews, Bing's Copilot, all of it, is fundamentally changing what shows up when someone searches for something. The old playbook of SEO lives over here, and the PPC lives over there, doesn't work anymore because AI-generated results are pulling from both, and sometimes neither, in ways that make the old boundaries kind of meaningless. Agencies are responding by knitting their SEO and PPC teams closer together. And honestly, it's about time. I've always thought the separation of paid and organic into different departments was more about internal turf than about client outcomes. Regardless, the client doesn't care which team drove the result. They care that they showed up when someone was looking for them. But here's the real implication for agency owners. If you're still selling SEO as a standalone service or PPC as a standalone service, you're selling a structure that's quickly becoming obsolete. The agencies that are going to thrive in AI-driven search are the ones that sell search strategy as one integrated thing. If your org chart still has these as separate P&Ls or separate teams that barely talk to each other, this is the quarter to fix that, because your clients are going to start asking questions that you can't answer with a siloed team. Now, shifting gears a bit. There was a really interesting piece in Digiday about CFOs moving upstream into marketing conversations. The headline framing was that agencies need to follow them there. And I think that's right, but I'd go further. What's happening is that marketing budgets are under more scrutiny than ever. CFOs aren't just approving budgets anymore. They're sitting on strategy conversations. They're asking pointed questions about attribution, about ROI timelines, and why this campaign costs what it costs. For a lot of agency people, this feels threatening. Feels like bean counters are taking over. I see it differently. If a CFO is in the room, that means the conversation has moved from tactics to business outcomes, and that's exactly where good agencies should and need to be. The agencies that struggle with this are the ones that can't connect their work to financial results. If your pitch is about impressions and engagement rates and in brand fit lift studies, good luck when the CFO starts asking what that means in revenue terms. But if you can walk into a room and talk about customer acquisition costs, lifetime value, and pipeline contribution, you're speaking the CFO's language. And suddenly, you're not a vendor anymore, you're a strategic partner. This is something I talk about with my clients constantly. The biggest unlock for agencies isn't better creative or more AI. It's learning to talk about money the way your clients' finance teams talk about money. It's not sexy, but it's the difference between being in the room and being outside it waiting for that purchase order. On that M&A front, Havas Media Network acquired Styleheads, a Berlin-based cultural marketing agency. This one's smaller in scale, but worth noting for the pattern it represents. Havas has been on a steady acquisition diet, picking up regional specialists that add either geographic reach or niche capability. Styleheads brings cultural marketing expertise on the German market. On paper, it makes sense. Havas gets a foothold in a very specific segment. Styleheads presumably gets access to bigger budgets and a global network. But as I always say with these deals, the press release is the easy part. The real question is what happens 6 months from now when the Styleheads team is trying to maintain their culture and their client relationships inside a holding company structure that was not built for boutique agencies. I've seen these integrations go well, and I've also seen them hollow out exactly the thing that made the acquired agency valued in the first place. If you're a niche agency owner who's got an acquisition call, and let's be honest, a lot of you might have, the question isn't whether the number is good. The question is whether you still recognize your agency. The question is whether you still recognize your agency in 18 months. Sometimes the answer is yes, but you need to go in with your eyes open. And then there's an interesting evolution happening in the creator economy. Today reported on how creator talent agencies are reinventing themselves as a multi-platform operator. These just aren't book deals for influencers anymore. They're building full production capabilities, managing distribution across platforms, handling brand partnerships, and in some cases, functioning more like a traditional creative agency than a talent shop. This matters for a couple of reasons. First, if you're a traditional creative or marketing agency, these creator-first shops are increasingly competing for the same briefs you are. They're coming at it from a different angle, though. Talent and audience first instead of brand strategy first. But they're landing in the same budget pools. Second, and I find this part more interesting, these creator agencies are essentially building a new agency model from scratch without the legacy overhead and assumptions that traditional agencies carry. They don't have a 100-person team billing hours. They have lean operations built around talent and content, and they're scaling by adding platform capability, not headcount. There's a lesson there for traditional agencies, even if the creator economy isn't in your space. The lesson is that the best new agency models are being designed around outcomes and distribution, not around departments and timesheets. That's worth paying attention to regardless of what kind of work you do. All right, well, if you made it this far, here's your action item for the week. And this one comes directly from that. Write down 2 things. First, write down your agency's AI story. What do you tell clients and prospects about how you're using AI? Then, write down your AI reality. What are you actually doing with your AI day-to-day operations right now? How is it changing your delivery? How is it affecting your pricing? And how is it showing up in the work? Now, compare those 2 lists. If there's a big gap between the story and the reality, that's not a crisis, that's information. It tells you where to focus. Maybe you need to invest in tooling. Maybe you need to train your team. Maybe you need to rethink how you scope and price projects. Or, and just maybe, this is fine to you. Or, maybe, and this is fine too, you realize your story is actually ahead of where it needs to be, and you should dial it back to something you can actually deliver on. The holding companies can afford to have a gap between story and reality because they've got billions in revenue to cush the fall. You don't. Your AI story and your AI reality need to be the same thing. So take 30 minutes this week and figure out where they diverge. That's the work. All right, if you found this useful, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and send it to another agency owner who might need to hear it. Thanks for listening. Make sure you leave a review, and I'll see you next week.